Hey there, PED 110 online people. This is your weekly update and a little mini lecture of what we covered in class. So hopefully this helps. I know my videography skills are not super great, but hopefully this is getting the job done. And if you need help throughout the week, please reach out. So one of the first things you need to do at the beginning of the week is log on to Moodle, read my welcome message, and check your weekly checklist. And all of the items on this checklist are going to be due by Sunday, September 6th, 11:55 p.m. This week you're going to be reading Chapter 2 and taking Chapter 2 quiz. So now you've done a quiz, you understand about how much time it's going to take you, and you should also know that you get 2 attempts and they're not timed. So I encourage you to read through the chapter and kind of go back and review, and if you need to redo it, that's totally fine. Next up, you're going to turn in your first lab this week. You'll submit it under lab assignments, lab number 1. It's in your textbook. It's on page 75. It's activity 2.3, setting SMART goals. It should look like this. It's posted on Moodle. So you have 2 options. You can type it up in a Word document and submit that on Moodle, or you can fill it out by hand in your book and just take a picture. All right? You also need to plan out 2 individual workouts, 1 cardio, 1 strength, and fill out 2 logs for those workouts this week. I'm going to be working through as quickly as I can the ones you submitted last week to give you any tips and advice of how to be doing it correctly. A few really good questions came up this week about the logs, and I just want to go over those with you. Someone asked, are these going to be turned in every single week? And the answer to that is no. You're going to be on your own on these. This is part of your independent online classwork. And so you are going to be doing the workouts on your own and submitting them again for a grade at midterm and final. These are a big portion of your grade, so it's really important that you prepare and plan and really think ahead of when you're going to be able to do these workouts. I also had students reach out about specific types of workouts. For example, does basketball count as a workout? And the answer to that is yes. Just make sure you're really tracking what you're doing and including detailed notes about what's going on. So basketball, I would consider it's really a combination of strength and cardio, but for the most part, I would say it's cardio, and I would be really interested in to know the intensity, how long you're playing, maybe some notes of what you were doing, were you just shooting around, playing a game, or also it'd be really great if you checked your heart rate throughout the game just to see what zone you're training in. Another question I get a lot is, does walking count as a workout? I'm a beginner and I really don't know where to start. So the answer to that question is, if you're a very, very beginner, that's totally okay, and you want to start in a place where you can continue to build this semester and keep growing. So you don't want to go out too crazy in the beginning. So if walking is where you're at, that's totally fine. Go for a walk, check your heart rate while you're doing it, and I encourage that. Walking is great. All right, we're going to move along to what we talked about in class today, but if you have any other questions about specific workouts, send me an email and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. So Chapter 2 in your textbook covers behavior changes, and it's a really great foundation for us moving along in the class and diving into more specific topics like nutrition and stress management and heart health. It's good to get this going and start thinking about your bigger goals in this class, because ultimately I'm trying to teach you how to live fit and healthy for the rest of your life. So the first part of the chapter kind of discusses things that are going on socially that make behavior change challenging. And I think it's really interesting. I'm not a sociology professor, but if I were, this is totally really interesting stuff, and there's lots going on in our world that affects everything in our lives. So one of the things that affects our physical activity is, in general, now our society as a whole, we tend to sit more often. We're more sedentary. There's more jobs now that require you to be sedentary, so that's evolved and changed over the years. Another thing that's happening, and you're doing right now, is what's screen time. So you're watching your screen And I'm sure today at some point you have used your phone or your computer. Our screen time has gone way up. The average American gets about 4.4 hours of screen time per day. Per day. 4 hours. It's a lot of hours. Another thing that's happening in America, we tend to be people who drive more. We also have less sidewalks, and we tend to do less walking and cycling compared to other countries. So that's stuff that's going on in our world that socially makes it unique to make behavior changes. In terms of food, that's also changing. In general, we have more eating occasions, so we eat more times per day than we used to. Our portion sizes have gotten larger. The amount of added sugar and processed food has gotten greater. And also we dine out more. On average, the American adult eats out about 4 times per week. Okay, so kind of a downer, but it's good to understand things that are happening in our society that affects us all. It's also good to understand what's going on biologically in your brain when you're trying to build habits or when you're trying to understand habits you already have. So there's a section in your book that goes into greater detail, but I'm going to give you the very simplified version of this. Basically, when you form a habit and you get some sort of reward from it, like for example in your brain, when you eat a piece of cake, your neurotransmitters tell you that, hey, this is nice. So it releases dopamine and also other chemicals in your brain that triggers a habit to be formed because your brain realizes that's a good feeling and it wants to keep going. So that's when you start forming unconscious habits where you just do things without really even thinking about it. And when you go back to adjust those habits, you have to understand the trigger. You have to understand the thing that releases the dopamine and makes you feel really good and give you that reward. So in class, we went over the 10 key barriers of change, meaning the things that stop us from making changes. And I'm going to review some of those now with you. All right, first one, lack of core values, meaning you don't necessarily have the interest of changing and being healthy. And one way to fight that barrier is to associate with people who are trying to live a healthy and happy lifestyle and to do more research and learn about the benefits of living a healthy lifestyle. Number 2, procrastination. I'm sure we are all aware of what this means. It's when you put things off and you don't do them right away. And we've done that, I'm sure, in many areas of our lives. But by procrastinating your health, you're potentially putting yourself at risk for disease and difficulties in life. So don't procrastinate. Do it now. All right, number 3, preconditioned cultural beliefs, meaning we have decided in our head that this is just how I am, this is just the environment I was raised in, this is just what it's going to be. But one way of changing that is finding someone who is like-minded in the sense that they're trying to grow and change and learn new things, and partner up with that person and really try to do something different. Number 4, gratification. It's sometimes easier short-term to do things that are not good for your body and for your mind, but long-term, it's not great. So instant gratification sometimes throws people off, and one way to combat that is to think long-term. All right, number 5, risk complacency. So this basically means that right now, let's say you're young and healthy and you're living your best life, it's kind of hard to consider what might happen 20 years from now, and we're just complacent with what's going on. So you really need to think ahead and understand that what you're doing now could affect your health in 5 years, 10 years, tomorrow. You need to consider different steps and stages of your life. All right, number 6, complexity. I think this one gets a lot of us, especially right now. Things are complicated, and when things are complicated, sometimes you don't want to do it, right? So the best thing you can do for this barrier of change is to take one step at a time. And my recommendation for this class is to start with one thing on your checklist and knock it out. If that's like for this week, if you start out on Monday or Tuesday reading chapter 2, you've already set yourself up better for taking the quiz later on. Number 7, indifference or helplessness, meaning you just think you can't fix it and you're not necessarily confident in making changes. And part of that is building up your confidence in just trying things that might feel uncomfortable, getting out of your comfort zone. It's also really important to be patient with yourself. Nothing is going to change overnight, and you just got to take these baby steps and have the confidence that it's going to evolve into something bigger and better. Number 8, rationalization. We are all great at rationalizing negative behaviors. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm just going to do it this time, or it's good for me right now. And we need to practice thinking long-term again, and also just understanding when that's happening. So checking in and realizing that you're rationalizing something. Illusions of invincibility. So if you're young and healthy right now, and if you think that's going to last forever, it probably will not. So I think it's very easy in our daily life to not really think about that, but we are not invincible, unfortunately. And it's part of our job as a productive and happy human to take care of our body and our mind. Surprise! Number 11. I forgot. There's one more. It's called loss aversion, which means that it's kind of sad when you have to give up these habits that might be fun or feel good, but aren't necessarily good for you. So we just have to remember that sometimes the end goal, the greater benefit, is a better, more productive thing, even when in the moment it might be more fun and exciting. All right, your book also covers behavior change theories. And in general, I'm just going to summarize this, but you should read and understand them. It's part of your quizzes. But in general, you have to make the conscious decision that you want to change a behavior. You have to really work on it. And then ultimately, you have to develop and maintain that new habit. And it can take weeks, months, years, or a lifetime. So the whole point of that is to understand that it takes a while and it is a full progression. Lastly, you're going to be working on creating and reviewing the meaning of SMART goals. I encourage you to do your lab 1 as you're finishing this chapter because they're connected. And I'm just going to quickly review the meaning of this acronym. S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for acceptable, R stands for realistic, and T stands for time specific. Factoring all these things in when you're creating your goal is so important because it's really the key to being able to actually execute and complete a goal. So have a good week, and if you have questions, email and reach out. I'm here to help.